Before he started coming out of the blue of the western sky as Sky King, Kirby Grant made a couple of films with Abbott and Costello. One of them, In Society, was one of their best in 19...
Yeah, but...
Hey, Kirby, glad you could join us today.
I'm so glad to be here. Yeah, Bud and Lou were characters. They really were. Lou Costello, of course, was... everybody liked Lou. Bud was a little more quiet, a little more reserved, but Lou was... he never met a stranger. And he had a lot of people around him all the time, and there were always laughs on the sets and things like that. We used to have a great deal of fun. Always playing a practical joke, those guys.
Well, the In Society film that you did with them really was, they were at the top then at Universal,
yeah.
Big stars.
Yes, indeed they were. I think their films probably made more money than Deanna Durbin's at that time for the studio.
When you made Coming Around the Mountain with them, though, and I believe it was 1951, they were on the decline, though. How was it different on the set with them?
Not much. There wasn't as much. Of course, In Society, you have to remember, was a very high-budget picture for its kind because it had costuming and all kinds of beautiful sets and things like that, whereas Coming Around the Mountain was, well, exactly what it implies. Over yonder on the hills, you know.
Well, Universal was doing the Monpont Kettle movies at the same time,
yes,
I guess.
They surely were. And I think that the Talking Mule pictures with Donnie O'Connor were being done at the time.
And so all the good gag writers were working for the new series, and Abbott and Costello were getting the used jokes, leftovers?
Well, not too much that. They're a different kind of comedy, really. Ed Hartman, a very dear friend of mine, was producer and writer on the Abbott Costello films, and he had a great ear and a great eye for their antics, and he did a fantastic job.
You've done a fantastic job for us today on Stardom, Kirby. Thanks for joining us. Kirby Grant was a big singing star at Universal. They were grooming you to co-star with Deanna Durbin after doing a couple of Gloria Jean films, and Johnny Mac Brown left, decided he didn't want to do westerns anymore, and you got the western series.
No, it wasn't Johnny Mac Brown. It was another guy.
Rod Cameron. All right.
Yeah. I couldn't afford to take suspension. I didn't really want to do the westerns. And I had just gotten out of service, and I couldn't afford to take a suspension, so my agent convinced me that I should go, and I realized that he wanted his 10%. And so that's the way the cookie crumbled, so to speak. But I don't know, westerns, they figured since I was born and raised in Montana that I should know one end of the horse from the other. And I happened to, but that didn't necessarily follow. I don't know. I guess they figured that anyone from a place like Helena, Montana, where Gary Cooper came from, and Alva Pippi, who was Jan McDonald, who was the major heavy in High Noon, came from Helena. Myrna Loy was from Helena. Murray Williams was her name. Carol, beautiful blonde gal, was under contract to MGM. Virginia Bruce.
Did you feel like you were typecast in the westerns once you got
sure.
in?
Yeah, you're stuck with them. You know, you're really stuck with them. Now, you take any big star that finally got out of the western, such as John Wayne. He was never too successful in doing pictures away from the western image, and none of them were.
Well, you changed and started doing this Mountie picture, the Snow Dog over here, too.
That's a western, too, you know.
Well, I noticed Milburn Stone's name on there, too. Now, he was pretty big with you at
Oh,
Universal.
yes. Milburn was under contract to Universal. He and I, what we didn't break up, we had fun with, I'll guarantee you, in those years. Really a lot of fun.
Those big studio days were something. Thanks for joining us today.
Pleasure.
Just before he was cast as Sky King, Kirby Grant had done a role in Caine Mutiny with Humphrey Bogart, and then he started to do his most remembered role, that of Uncle Schuyler King on The Adventures of Sky King.
You know, a lot of people don't realize that was his name, Schuyler. They figured over the sky, you know, Sky, King of the Sky.
Such a great name, too, Sky King.
Schuyler King, Sky King, yeah. Penny and Clipper, the niece and the nephew. You know, I wanted so much to do a show that told the audience where Penny and Clipper came from originally, whether it was a sister of mine or a brother or what happened, and why I was never married, at least explain all this.
Kind of like Huey, Dewey, and Louie with Uncle Donald. Where did they come from?
Yeah, I understand they're having a problem in Poland, is it not? They're being banned from the air? Or Finland, I guess it is. Yeah, because they're afraid that Donald Duck and his Daisy were living in sin or something, you know.
May have been.
Sky, it's It's, oh, you know, your old friend from the oil fields?
Willie McNair?
Yes, I'd recognize his car anywhere.
What's he doing way out here?
I don't know.
Looks like he's heading for the ranch, unless that truck runs him off the road first.
Well, what can we do?
Give that truck driver some of his own medicine. If he wants to play tag, we'll play.
Your role as Sky, though, that ran in syndication on CBS from the early 50s, 51 or 2,
Well,
67.
It started out in what we call spot syndication, and then later it was network, CBS. And after we ran for 12 years network, we went back into syndication, only regular, ordinary syndication. And it was at that time that we did foreign countries. We did it in Japan. I'll never forget, I was sitting with Dan Blocker in a room in a hotel in Tokyo, and we were watching our series with Japanese voices. Now, you would think that Dan, being the big, husky guy that he was, would have had a fairly deep voice for the Japanese voice. But no, they put a voice like this there, you know. And mine wasn't too bad, but it was hilarious. It really was. But both series, of course, went over very well. They love Westerns. Just love them.
I do, too.
Yeah, I know you do.
Thanks, Kirby.
Pleasure.
You're a friend, and I enjoyed having you.
Thank you.